Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the big D word, and that is divorce, something that we don't talk about a lot. A lot of people shy away from, but on the podcast, seeing it a lot come up in terms of real estate transactions. And I just want to get an expert on here to talk about it. Welcome back to the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast. My name is Phil Bailey. I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Today on the podcast, I have a very, very, very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Karl Ossenkopp. He is going to kind of be leading us through some of the situations that he sees in his business. Karl, before we get started, tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your background.
Excellent. Well, Phil, thanks very much for having me on this. I quite enjoy doing little talks and helping people understand what it is that I do. So my background obviously is finance. I've been a financial planner pretty much since 2003. Sold my first business in 2009, started another one in 2010 where I focused on mortgages, insurance, and investments. Unfortunately, around the same time period, I went through my own divorce, which lasted 8 years. Yes, that is a horror story. My claim to fame, of course, is arguing with the judge about how my finances worked. Fortunately, the judge was incorrect. However, he's a judge, so he's right. Which led me then to discover that judges and lawyers tend to not really understand finances too in-depthly. So I became a chartered financial divorce specialist and then also became a family mediator. The big part about family mediation was doing an accreditation, which kind of opened my eyes up to what I went through and what other people go through. I was very fortunate. Mentor was Paula DeVito. She dealt with high conflict cases where the judges would order them to go see Paula. She would deal with the communication, the parenting plan. And then having me as an intern doing finances, we discovered, one, people stopped yelling and screaming at each other, which is a good thing. And two, within about 2.5 months, the two of us were able to resolve most things that had been in courts for about 5 years. So we kind of joined forces together, and now we've joined up with the London Collaborative Group, and that's pretty much the history of where we are today.
Nice. Yeah. No, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Karl. I really appreciate it. I see some complicated financial situations sometimes that arise after divorce. Obviously, as a real estate agent, I'm dealing with the real estate aspect of it, or hearing about what the lawyer is allowed to, telling them what to do, who do you need to talk to. Every time you talk to them, it costs you some money usually. So, I know that divorce does happen, and financial situations can really get quite complicated. So I guess one of the first steps, what is the process when you're dividing finances in terms of what you see with your clients?
Well, that's always a fun question because, again, there's a lot of myths out there. One of the ones I always love to make fun of is the let's split it all down the middle. So we line it all up and then we cut it all in half, and you get half of this and you get half of that. Typically speaking, that's not very tax advantaged. There's a lot of issues involved with that. And a lot of times we're not dealing then with the interest. So I have a little analogy I like to use, and it helps people kind of understand it. The idea is to you'll hear this thing called full financial disclosure. So that's called like grabbing all the ingredients, putting all the ingredients together. I don't care where it comes from because I'm a neutral participant. That's the only way I deal with this. So each party gives me their information. I put it together, and then I give a summary. My summary, in essence, is like a cookie, right? And I'm sure you remember when, I don't know, Phil, if you have kids. I mean, you have kids, and I'm sure you were a kid at one point, and I'm sure you have a sibling. So people out there who have siblings, remember there's one cookie left, and your parents are like, yeah, you guys can split that cookie. And so the one kid grabs the knife, slowly cuts it in half because the other sibling gets first picks. Kind of the same kind of analogy that we use when we look at divorces. My role is to build that cookie, and then we look at how can we divide it in the most equitable way possible. Well, sometimes another great analogy I'll use is the jelly beans. So, there's purple jelly beans, blue jelly beans, red jelly beans, yellow jelly beans, and we put them all into a big jelly bean jar, and then we got to divide them out. So one party may end up with all the purple ones. One party may end up with all the blue ones, and then, might split a little bit of the yellow ones here and a little bit of the yellow ones over on the other side. So the idea is to really understand your full financial picture. So my role literally is gathering the information, educating both sides to make sure that they understand what their financial picture is. And Phil, I'm sure you recognize that not everyone understands their financial pictures. From there, we work with them to allow them to make their own decisions, right? Part of that is involving other professionals, having their accountants, having their financial planners be involved. You know, it just makes it easier for me to speak geek with them to make sure that everyone's on the same page. If we have a house, that's why I reach out to a realtor, because if we need to sell the house or we need another valuation of a house, I have my background, of course, mortgage, so I have an understanding of housing prices and how things are going. But sometimes you need that other advocate there, that they may really trust and have a relationship with. If they need to suddenly sell the house, having a realtor there is key, and working with us. So I'd reach out to you, Phil, and say, hey, let's have a meeting. Let's find out what the house is worth. What are the type of offers we want? What do we want to list it for, right? Because one party will want it higher, one party will want it lower. What is the realistic number that allows them to offboard the relationship and move forward? So yeah, it is complicated, but the goal is to make sure that you surround yourself with enough professionals who actually understand what it is to go through a separation. And I think that's what stands our organization out than the typical approach, is because we try to wrap our clients around with more professionals to help them manage this offboarding.
Yeah, yeah, similar to, I mean, in a way, like it's as a real estate agent, I'm the same way in the sense of, I need to bring in a home inspector because that he knows much more about inspecting a house than I do. I'm kind of like the generalist in the equation, and then I kind of lead them through that process. So I appreciate you sharing that. Like when it comes to a house, because obviously this is the London, Ontario real estate podcast. So
Yes.
I'm curious when you talk about the house aspect of it, like when there are spouses that are splitting up, what options do they typically have when it comes to real estate in order for them to kind of move forward with that house? I know you mentioned a couple, but kind of curious on digging a little bit deeper into that.
So obviously there's literally usually just two options. One, the obvious option is you sell, take the proceeds, add them to the net family property statement, and see how that all gets divvied out. Gives each couple the opportunity to have possibly some cash in their pocket to be able to manage moving forward life in two homes. I'm sure, as you recognize, real estate prices went up rather significantly in the last 5 years, to the point where it's very difficult for one party or one income to be able to manage a home. We see it a lot, where you have, a house at 600,000, 700,000. You may have a mortgage of 200,000 or 300,000 on it, but if you're looking to refinance that and be able to, buy the other party out, which is of course your second option, well, you require a substantial income to be able to do that. And usually we won't be able to figure that out until we figured out, what the support payments are, what the parenting schedule looks like. So, it does become quite convoluted, but at the same time, knowing all your options and recognizing that, there is no right answer. It's just, what can you handle from a cash flow standpoint at the end? So a lot of times my involvement also puts people, as my favorite saying is, in the realm of reasonability. So yes, I love my house, but I can't afford my house. So maybe it's not a great idea. I always make the joke, we can't always have what we wanted. I wanted unicorns. We ended up with giraffes. I don't know. You explain that one to me, right? So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, but I know a lot of people really want to keep that house, not recognizing from a cash flow standpoint, it's not possible. And then allowing you to have that extra money from the sale of your house to be able to have a cushion. So when something happens in life, you have access to money, might just be a better idea.
Yeah. So, my you mentioned unicorns, and my daughter would be excited because she's in her unicorn phase of life right now. And,
Yes.
kind of brings me to the next topic of the podcast. Children can complicate things, I think, probably a lot, just seeing, friends and folks go through splitting up. It's not great, but it always seems like sometimes it can be really complicated, other times it cannot be. Like, do you have any tips for that, of how to uncomplicate it? Obviously there's a lot of emotion involved, but does it always have to be this super complicated thing, in terms of what you're seeing from your business?
Oh, and again, it comes down to making sure you have the right professionals that are with you. So when it comes to having children, yes, there's an additional complication, because again, if you don't have children, you just part your ways and off you go, right? Obviously, if you still have children, you're still tied. Now it's a family in two homes, right? And that is the biggest caveat that I always like to focus on is that yes, you are still a family, but now you're family in two homes. So learn to communicate more effectively. Make sure you have the right professional. So having a family professional involved in your separation is key. They help you craft your parenting plan. They help you when it comes to understanding how to communicate with your children, how not to put them in the middle of it. We always I always hear the whole thing about, well, I want to tell the truth to my children. No, they don't really need to hear it. Leave them out of it. This is between you and your spouse, right? So, relating that back again to finances, it does become complicated in the sense that, you want to make sure both parties have relatively the same kind of income flow to be able to raise those kids. So again, it's understanding what the realm of reasonability looks like and working with professionals to make sure that it does work out that way. When it comes to a house, I always like it's in the best interest of the kids for us to stay in the house. Well, if you're stressed out and you can't afford your mortgage, your kids are going to pick up on it. No, then it's not the best place for your kids because you're stressed out and you can't help your kids. So find something in the same school district or whatever the case is. Maybe you rent for a year until you figure out life. But the goal is for you to be the happiest, healthiest, most vibrant person so your kids don't see you stressed out. Right? So focus on making sure that you're okay and then your kids will be okay. And I think that's what a lot of people seem to forget is that, okay, Phil, you just mentioned you had a daughter. If she's doing something in the corner and she's not supposed to be doing it, you can just look at her and she knows, oops, Pops didn't like me doing that. So they pick up on everything. So it's one of those situations where, yeah, you have to take care of yourself and being stressed out, not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because the other day I was like sick a little bit, and she like knew. She's like, "So you sick?" And I was like, "Yeah, just a bit. Like, we're gonna be okay." But I can only imagine, yeah, the emotional toll of that, and like being like underwater and house poor as we say sometimes, and then also dealing with all that. So, I mean, yeah, you're taking a topic that a lot of people see as super negative and making there's some positive sides of it as well to be able to move forward and be happy is kind of what you keep going back to. So I appreciate that for sure.
Well, it's one of those things where it's interesting because we still have a social stigma that ending a relationship is a bad thing. Typically speaking, I found, and I know we're going off topic here, but let's go off topic for a second. Every time I meet with couples and I do my own personal intake, I always discover when did the relationship end, and it's usually like, oh, it ended like 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, why did you stay in the relationship then? Oh, because we're supposed to stick it out and work on it.
Yeah.
How'd that work out? It's like, okay, so now you're 5 years later and you weren't able to fix it. And I'm going to be, kind of blunt in the point here. Most people don't know how to communicate and most people don't know their personal finances. Number one and two reasons of why people end up getting divorced because they can't communicate and they don't understand their finances. When the finances go bust, they don't know how to communicate about it. So they yell and scream at each other and boom, the best option is let's get divorced. And sometimes it's funny because I think, if you just learn how to communicate right from the get-go, it might be that much easier.
Yeah.
Be open, be honest about your finances as soon as you get into a relationship. And I find that it's not a social norm, which is kind of bizarre. But then again, I'm in the financial world, so my poor kids, they know all about finances, and they've discovered that most of their friends, hey, do you have a tax-free savings account? And their friends are like, what's that?
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
kind of and they're like 19 and 27 years old, and most of their friends haven't quite figured it out yet. Anyways, yes, you have other questions. Go for it.
Yeah, no, it's the same. Yeah, I think it's the same for me. Like in terms of like real estate, like I was talking to a client the other day, and it's like I think I saw about 300 houses last year in London. So when you think about it, like if you saw 300 houses in London and then you knew what they sold at, and you knew, like you just like right? So I always have to be careful to be like, you just have like some much more context, right,
Yes.
around these things. And I mean, obviously you do as well, because you're like, well, no, why if you just it's like the same issue over and over and over again, right? So I mean, there's some probably part of this podcast too could be, what to do in a relationship to stay together, not for the kids but for yourself, right? And I think you're right. Communication is
Yes.
something that's huge, and yeah, obviously, discussing all aspects of things, I think is huge too. So yeah, I always have to watch myself on that, because sometimes I'm like, it's like I know sometimes what I think they're gonna buy, but I still have to like guide them through the process, right? And
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
like there was a book about that, and it's basically like the Sherpa, right? Like you're the one like getting them up you're helping them get up the mountain, but they still got to climb the mountain themselves, right? So it's yeah, you're just guiding them up there. So speaking of, what I was kind of talking about before, in the sense of like, if I need an expert, obviously I need a lawyer to close a transaction, I need a home inspector typically, right? Now talking with you, sometimes I may need someone, to refer, like yourself, right? I know you work with a lot of partners as well, and when I work with partners, my biggest thing I tell clients is competence is is kind of up there. I want someone who is competent, obviously, but like really really good is kind of the better way that I kind of draw that, put that bar up there. So how do you select your partners that you work with, Carl?
Oh, that is a tough one. And again, working this business, it's very difficult to find um, other people that are willing to actually put the effort in, right? And I listened to a really interesting podcast from the States. It was a lawyer who worked in New York as well as in Florida. And her big caveat was it was easier to be a litigator than it was to be a collaborative law lawyer. Because a collaborative law lawyer requires you to actually, listen, actually work with your client and keep them in check and work within a team. And so for myself, again, building that network of people that I enjoy working with, especially those that get it, right? Um, my background, having been in finances, feel like yourself, we work on commission. So for years and years and years, I was so accustomed to working on commission. Then moving to this realm where I'm working on an hourly fee base is very difficult for me, right? So it ends up being that I want to find other people that also get it, in the sense that our role is to help offboard a relationship and move them forward in the most economical way possible and in the shortest time period. This doesn't need to be dragged out. It doesn't need to be complicated. The complicated aspects, you rely on your other professionals. From a finance standpoint, that would be me and your accountant, your financial planner, your realtor, your corporate lawyer, if you have a corporate lawyer, right? I work with them on a regular basis if there's corporations involved. Let us deal with those complex situations. Then making sure you have a family professional there, preferably someone who has a master's in social work, understands the dynamics of, the development of children, and how to build a parenting plan that is, integrated within the family, right? We all have very different schedules, and you have to work with that. And you have to make sure that it works well with the children as well. And then from a legal aspect, making sure that you have lawyers there that, one, understand to rely on those professionals, and two, have the ability to craft the agreement in the most effective way possible and in a timely manner. So yeah, over the years I've discovered there's certain people I really enjoy working with, others not so much anymore. I'm at that stage now where when people reach out to me and they've already had a lawyer, I might just say, no, I'm not going to work with you, because your lawyer's not going to be doing what's in the best interest of you. Your lawyer's going to do what's in the best interest of them. Nothing against that lawyer specifically. It's just they haven't made that shift yet to recognize that the goal is to offboard a relationship in a timely manner, in the most effective manner, in the most cost-effective manner. So
Yeah.
it takes time, it takes effort, it takes caring about the family, and trying to find the right people takes time. So do your due diligence. Make sure you reach out and have those you know different people in your back pocket to be able to help you. Um, yeah, that it is a. I've always been the person who worked on a holistic basis, so it's not really that much different from my financial planning days, working with, other mortgage people, other investment professionals, realtors, and so on. When I work with clients to get, rental properties put into place, I, I don't have time to sit there and take them out and show them 300 houses for a year, right?
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. My goal is to do the planning aspect, and then, okay, here, talk to your accountant, here, talk to your realtor, here, talk to your corporate lawyer. Let's then come back together and go, okay, yeah, this works the best. So it's no different than building a business. Here we're offloading a business, the business of a family, right?
Hmm.
So if you look at it from a business structure, it just goes that much quicker. Yes, there's emotions involved. That's why we have our family professionals. So make sure you have your professionals in place.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. So I think next time when someone tells me they're getting divorced, I'm going to say, no, you're offloading your relationship.
Well, and that's just it. Like, think about
I
like
like
every
that.
movie you've ever seen, Phil. As soon
Yeah.
as someone says anything about a divorce in a family, like in any of those movies, the first thing some family member says, "Oh, you got to go lawyer up and battle." And you're like,
Yeah.
"Battle what?
Yeah.
What are you battling?" I never understood that. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
let's you know undo your relationship. Make sure you're taking care of the family in two homes. Seems that much
Yeah.
simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think yeah, you're right. It's like this whole thing of like, you did marry that person at some point in your life. Like, I understand people change and things go crazy sometimes, but it's interesting to me. Yeah. Cause it's like, I like that offloading. I'm going to put that. That's a good way to put it, Carl. Okay, Carl, we're kind of wrapping up the podcast here. I did want to just allow people to get in touch with you. Obviously, if they have a question for you, you do a lot to help people. So how can folks get in touch with you, Carl?
Well, actually, it's kind of neat. So just go to my website, osco.ca. So on there, you can request to have a 30-minute consult with me. So I always schedule a Zoom call with everybody where I give an overview of who I am, what I do. Then I listen to where their situation is at. And from there, I kind of leave it in their arena as to what would they like to do, right? So they're on the ground dealing with it. I'm up in the stands watching. Um, Tell me who else you need me to be there with. If you need help, I can guide you in the right directions. If it's a fit, great. If it's not, I don't take offense, right? It's your journey going through this. So, but yeah, I give a lot of my time back. I reply to my emails. I typically don't charge for phone calls and emails. I just have to say within reason. So if you email me 10 times in one day, yes, I might have to charge you for that sucker. But on the most part, the idea is to build communication. So right off the bat, I try to be as open and honest about my communication structure by having that free Zoom call. And people seem to really appreciate that. And then from there, if you do hire me on, just know that, yeah, from a billing standpoint, yeah, phone calls, emails don't charge for. I want to be able to build a relationship with you to be able to help you figure out what you need to do.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for joining the podcast,
Hey, no
Carl.
worries.
That's how you get in touch with Carl. I really appreciate everyone listening to the podcast and watching on YouTube now that we're going to be
Ooh,
putting that up there as well. So you're famous now, Carl.
oh no.
Um, yeah, exactly. My name is Phil Bailey. I'm a real estate agent in London, as you probably know from listening. My number, you can just text me 226-977-2348 or go to my website. It's just philbailey.ca. Thanks again for joining the podcast, Carl. I hope you have a wonderful day, everyone listening, and take care. Let's talk soon. Take care.
Thank you.